Hi, everybody. This is Dave Hodges of the Common Sense Show, where we are freeing America, one enslaved mind at a time. And on the newsmaker line with me is Steve Quayle from stevequayle.com. He needs no introduction. And I've asked Steve to come on and give me his reaction to the death of David Rockefeller, who passed away yesterday at the age of 101. Steve, welcome. And what's your reaction to the death of David Rockefeller?
Well, I think the timing is everything. Right now we're seeing the very thing that David Rockefeller congratulated the press on, Dave, if you remember, back in 1991 at the Bilderberger meeting in Baden, Germany. And by the way, obviously Bill Clinton was there and, Dan Quayle, former vice president. But I think it's telling that he's died at this point because up until this point, people just ignored. Dave, even the conservatives, they quote it now and then. But let me quote this, and you and I will talk about it. We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years.
Yeah.
He went on to explain, it would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subject to the lights of publicity during those years. But the world is more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national auto-determination practiced in past centuries. Now, basically what that's saying, we rich guys know better than the peasants. It's also saying we've controlled the press for years. And you've probably read or you've probably quoted John Swinton's famous quote, okay? And I want to put this into perspective, okay? Because we're seeing the complete dissolution of credibility even in some of the, quote, conservative offerings like Fox News, okay? Now, here's the quote, that, the former chief of staff of the New York Times said. Now, notice that obviously the New York Times is singled out by David Rockefeller in 1991, along with the Washington Post. But here's the infamous quote. I've quoted this so many times I should be able to do it by memory, but I can't at this point. There is no such thing at this date of the world's history in America as an independent press. You know it, and I know it. There is not one of you who dares to write your honest opinions, and if you did, you know beforehand that it would never appear in print. I am paid weekly for keeping my honest opinion out of the paper I am connected with. Others of you are paid similar salaries for similar things, and any of you who would be so foolish as to write your honest opinions would be out on the streets looking for another job. If I allowed my honest opinions to appear in one issue of my paper before 24 hours, my occupation would be gone. Now, here it is, Dave, and then we'll talk at length about this, because David Rockefeller is, in my opinion, one of the twin most evil people in our generation. And I think his buddy is also assumed for the great hellish beyond, and I'll describe who he is in a minute. Now, listen to this. The business of the journalist is to destroy the truth, to lie outright, to pervert, to vilify, to fawn at the feet of mammon, and to sell his country and his race for his daily bread. You know it, and I know it. And what folly is this toasting an independent press? ? We are the tools and vassals of rich men behind the scenes. We are the jumping jacks. They pull the strings, we dance. Our talents, our possibilities, and our lives are all the property of other men. We are intellectual prostitutes. And so when you put the Swinton quote in, and it's almost very interesting to me, that he basically said this before the New York Press Club in 1953. So here we are now, 47, what are we, almost 64 years, if my math is right, later, and we're seeing David Rockefeller's quote, John Swinton's absolute true evaluation of the press, we're seeing the press wars. We're seeing the Cannibal News Network. We're seeing MSNBC. We're seeing all of the major, if you will, mouthpieces for hell in a flurry against the truth. And so what's fascinating to me is that I'm asking another question that most people wouldn't even consider. It is my contention that these super, if you will, rich guys, Beelzebub's billionaires, okay, you can use that. That's a new term I just came up with before you and I went on the radio or went on your broadcast, Dave. The Beelzebub, they're Lord of the Flies, and now they're swarming. And they're swarming because they've been disturbed. Their nest of flies has been someone stirring the nest big time. And what's happening now is, everything that Orwell wrote about, worried about, he said people, quote, this isn't the exact thing, but he said, and this is quoted in Snowden's book or the book about Snowden, but basically in order for people to think, they've got to wake up out of unconsciousness. It is my determination, and after all these years of writing, after all these years of speaking, that we have, as an American people, through the media and through the medium of everything from television, anything that you have seen or heard, we have been programmed by very sinisterly wicked people. We've been put into, if you will, a form of ignorant stupor. We've been put into a blissful existence where reality no longer means anything. And if you look at the snowflakes melting down, if their batteries go out on their iPhone or iPad or whatever, their gaming console, we're seeing a complete, if you will, control of telepresence. Now, you remember that's what Orwell talked about, the telepresence. And right now, with the omnipresence of the intelligence community, I think, Dave, the biggest thing that you need to do as an author, I need to do as an author, and what we need to do as talk show hosts is take the narrative back. You cannot have the revelations that have come out from all the whistleblowers. It's not, hey, gee, there's no evidence that Donald Trump was, wiretapped. You have all the evidence in the world because everything anybody has said is wiretapped.
Exactly.
Everything is brain mapped, and that's one that'll shake the trees. But the idea that there's no evidence, that's such horse manure that even the horses are abandoning, defecating in the field over that one. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but people have got to wake up. It's everyone. It's everywhere. Telepresence is everywhere. The television sets are monitoring you. Your emails, even when the television sets are off, even when you think your phone is off, and even if you could unplug with all the drone technology now and all of the different abilities to spy, to even, a map, I said brain mapping, to basically impregnate a person's mind with thoughts that don't even exist to them. This is the demon's delight. Now, I want to get to the bottom line. That's the intro. When evil men like this are possessed with genuine evil spirits, and you can't separate the occult from these guys, especially those who want the New World Order, the One World Order. The book of Revelation goes into great detail, and you cannot see the values of our society and the globalist nightmare. Obviously, Rockefeller gave the land that the United Nations operates on, and now that Trump is saying no more cash for you guys, there's nothing that'll make a bureaucrat more disturbed than cutting off his gravy train, okay? Because they exist. They're even beyond a paramecium in their simplicity. As long as you give them the money and whatever their pleasure focuses on, they'll dance to your tune, they'll sing your song, and they will play your violin. Because the deal is that now we've got a situation, Dave, where one of the most sinisterly wicked men for 101 years has gone, in my opinion, to his eternal reward in hell. My opinion is that the evil spirits, and I think they're pretty major ones, now are going to look for a house that's compatible. Jesus talked about that. When the unclean spirit, if you will, the evil spirit, the demons, go out, they go and look for a house. They walk in dry places. So I think the interesting fact of Rockefeller's death is timed to the exposure, and I believe God's doing it, of the complete whoredom. And the mouth of the beast, which is the press, which is the television media, and every other way that communication is being disseminated, both seen, unseen, both heard and unheard. When I say unheard, I'm talking in the realm of infrasonics, where you don't really hear it, in your audio canal or in your ear, but it goes directly through your mastoid into your brain. So the issue tonight is one of the most evil men in the world has gone to his hellish reward, and now who takes his place, but who becomes the willing accomplice for, if you will, the invocation and the welcoming committee for those evil spirits to possess? A lot of people had better understand something. This is a supernatural evil. There is no way to explain it on a global scale, and now we've got the, if you will, the proof will be in the pudding, and we'll see who is being put up as the next great billionaire savior of the world with the same values. So how I would tell everybody to use basic discernment, look who will mention him in any type of adulation, meaning those who will quote David Rockefeller, lift him up, and then look for buzzwords. Go on, internet search and look at his speeches, and then look for the phrases, because you know this, Dave, as a research investigator writer, they will phrase their statements in such a way that they're going to basically say, we're back. I'm talking about demons now, okay? And isn't it fascinating if on the front of Drudge every day they're talking about more cases of demon possession, that the official exorcists can't keep up with it, and yet you've got the acknowledgement of it on one hand, but denial on the other. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Mystery Babylon. I believe it's not a mystery. I believe there are historic Babylon, economic Babylon, and then I believe there's religious Babylon. I believe religious Babylon now has its mouthpiece in Rome. I believe financial Babylon has its, if you will, roots in both, and it's kind of like a Siamese twin. It has its roots in both New York and in the city of London. So we're going to see some very evil men dying over the next year. George Bush Sr., there are others like him that people think, oh, he's just a kindly old man. I can tell you that's not the case. And some of the people that have put on the American people, I'm praying, Dave, and I pray that the people listening to your show pray that God unmasks them all.
Wow. You said, my head is spinning, Steve. You just said a mouthful, and people are going to have to probably re-listen to what you just said, because there was so much material in there. Let me condense it down to this one question. Do you think that the death of David Rockefeller will slow down the advancement of the New World Order?
No, I actually believe it'll speed it up. And here's why I say that. These guys in the world of the occult have what I call pre-death ceremonies, where they actually they invoke evil spirits. And they have, if you will, a going-home party for them, but a sharing of the wickedness for others. So I believe it's the opposite. I believe now it's going to accelerate, because look at this. Dave, look at what's happened just in the last couple days, We're seeing now Korea saying they're going to nuke us. We're seeing in North Korea, remember, North Korea is nothing but a lackey for very powerful forces behind the scene. Nothing makes a wealthy cadre or a composite group of billionaire trillionaires happier than someone that they can basically initiate World War III. And I believe that when God says it's time, it's going to be time. I believe we'll see the confrontation with North Korea, maybe not a global nuclear war, but Japan is not going to sit back. And this is something I would like everybody to recognize. We've got a situation now in Fukushima. This plays into the North Korean card. And I just want people to anticipate this statement. Kim Jong-un, or, I call him the guy that basically, I call him the big crazy guy, and his father was a little crazy guy. He can basically send the nukes to Japan right now, and if he has enough of them, he can hit Fukushima. He can hit, one of Japan's, 17 reactors on the coast. And if he hits a breeder reactor, he can, how do I say this, based on the intelligence he has, he can initiate, he gets more bang for his buck. You follow me?
Yes.
So that's something that people had better be concerned about, because now the dead zones in the Pacific Ocean are, I know this sounds almost too cliche, but off the charts. Yet guess what? The powers that be, the devils that are, the ruler kingdoms from hell, are covering up all of the nuclear radiation warnings of the past when we were developing atom bombs. And even as kids, we used to know that, hey, if the meter spiked in that yellow box with a handle on it, that was really tough. Or you had the dosimeters, which showed you your individual dose rate of radioactivity. Now we go mindlessly, blindedly, and deaf and dumbedly. Now, I know those aren't words. I'm just applying variations of the actual words into the future. And when I say the future, people in our generation, you know this, Dave, you're an educator, they don't think about, most of them, the majority don't think about next year. They don't think about graduating. They don't think about paying back their $1 trillion student loans. What they think about is the immediacy of the moment, the pleasure of the moment, or getting high at the moment, and maybe that's their pleasure. So when you ask me, do I believe specifically that this will slow down the New World Order, outside of God's giving us if you will, in any game there are timeouts and the ref can call fouls. God is the God of all, and he can do what he so pleases. But you know, Dave, even Christians who give me their hate mail in my email, they say, you know it's going to happen, let's just get it over with. I doubt anybody that makes that flippant claim could handle the battlefield gore that our veterans have had to endure in Iraq and Afghanistan and around the world, and the horrors that these guys live with. Horrors, Horrors, and we in America get to live with the political WHORES. The best way I can describe what's going on in Washington, D.C. is to use an Amazon term, or actually an Amazon fish, not an Amazon term, is political piranhas on the Potomac of self-indulgence. And that's the epitome of the definition of lawlessness, when each man does that which is right in his own sight. So, Dave, we're in for, I would say, a speeding up, not a lessening of.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I talked to Patrick Woodfrom on an interview this morning, Steve. He said exactly the same thing. He thinks the Rockefeller empire is going to diversify. Who do you think will become the patriarch of the Rockefeller empire?
Well, obviously his descendants, but my guess is they've chosen someone obscure, and who knows how many children, were birthed out of wedlock. I'm not accusing them of that. I don't know. I don't pay that much attention. But what I'm saying, Dave, one more time, I think this is a critical point so people don't miss it. They need to go on the internet and do a search of his statements. Then they need to note, okay, because whoever it is will appear. It may come out of it may come out of whatever financial institution or whatever political pundits got the word for the day. But what they need to watch for is phraseology that he himself has used, meaning David Rockefeller, because that will be their message, if you will, to the Illuminists that I'm in control now, meaning the person who the mantle has been passed to. Does that not sound to you? Because I've said it on your show and many times on other shows that God allows, if you will, he mandates the devil tell what's going to do, what he's going to do. And the Bible verse on that is, surely the Lord God will do nothing except he reveals his secrets to the servants of prophets. The testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. I'm not talking about the office of a prophet. But what is happening is we're seeing everything. Have you not written, and if you will, I'll turn the interview on you. Have you, Dave Hodges, not written extensively about the Illuminist plans? And now you don't have to talk about the plans. You need to say, they're here, folks, they're integrating. Isn't that a true statement?
Well, you're right. We both have acknowledged that. When I interviewed you a couple months ago, you said something that really stuck with me. You said, in the end days, all will be revealed. And this is exactly what we're seeing now. There are no secrets. It's never been so easy to pry out information, Steve, as it is right now.
No. And quoting David Rockefeller in that statement I read, he specifically, I'll make it even blunter. I won't use, bad language because I'm not trying to do that, but I'll say this. He's saying this, thank you. This is a Quayle phrase. That's kind of like a paraphrase, but in my words, thank you for allowing me to work the ultimate deception over the people of the earth to bring about the Luciferian kingdom in which we will rule and reign forever. That's the bottom line of that quote that he gave to the Bilderbergers at Baden. That's the bottom line. And so, the thing is that, and watch who also hails him as a great man, okay? Telltale. In the hail, they will tell the tale. And when I say hail, I'm saying, the accolades, the praise, and then ask yourself at the end of the day, what man did more harm to our way of life? What man did more harm to build up a movement to destroy our sovereignty, our borders, our language, our culture? What man pushed with his great wealth more scientific, if you will, injectable death than he did? And by the way, I've talked to people that worked for that foundation, and some of the secret labs that they have are, when I say this, astronomical in their complexity and their funding. Even a pilot that flew a certain famous guy into a certain famous area. I'll just do that because that's all people need to know. No offense if I told them where, when, and how. What good would it do them? It wouldn't do them any good, If people would spend as much time, Dave, as being original researchers and digging into just like that's a jewel, if you will. That's a nugget, what I said. Watch who parrots his phrases. I'm not talking about quoting him now to make, but I'm talking about watch who integrates them into his speech. Again, and I'm sorry, but I make no apologies for this, but Jesus made it simple. The tree is known by the fruit it bears. I don't care. You can argue with a pineapple tree all you want, or a pineapple plant. But the point being is that you can't convince a pineapple that he's let's say, take a horrible vegetable, in my opinion, Brussels sprout, A Brussels sprout, you can't put ears of grass on it and say, well, this is a mini pineapple. You're saying, no, that's a really ugly attempt to hide a Brussels sprout. What am I saying here? Simply this. It doesn't matter what they dress up the lie in. The tree is known by the fruit it bears. And we are seeing the Pope, in my opinion, the Pope is absolutely fulfilling the role of the false prophet. We're seeing the cry for globalism, one world order. We're seeing the war on cash. All these things you've written about, all these things we've talked about. But there's going to be a game-changing event, and I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's North Korea. I don't know if it's the new Madrid. I don't know if it's the Pacific Coast earthquake. By the way, my sources are saying, and they're really good sources, they're still in Gov, and they still are briefed. The bottom line is they're worried about the fault that runs from the San Diego area into Borrego Springs and into Palm Springs and Palm Desert. That's the one that's really worrying them. So while people's eyes are focused up in the, obviously the San Andreas or the Northridge area, or even any of the intersecting faults up in Northern California and Cascadia, the real play, the real concern, I'm told, is basically right now in Southern California leading in to Palm Desert, Borrego Springs, etc. And I forget the name of the vault. I can find it and email it to you. But anyway, the thing is that I see things escalating now because, listen, these people will do everything. Remember, I think you quoted Hillary's statement, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm quoting it, and I may be substituting one word, but didn't she say, Dave, if that bastard wins, we'll all go to jail or we're all going down?
Exactly. She sure did. And she's got her guy in place in Comey who's making sure that's not happening. And in fact, I'm coming out with a story shortly, Steve, where I've come across new information with Comey's past relationships with the Clintonites. And I have to tell you, the marriage is there. But I've also been told by Paul Preston and he won't reveal a lot right now. He says it's inside information. He can't reveal a source at this point. But here's what he said to me. He said, Dave, he said, I know you're concerned about Comey and why was Comey kept on as FBI director, his close association with the Clintons, his criminality in his past. He said, but I'm telling you, it's all going to be used against them, and Trump knows exactly what he's doing. And I'm going to trust in that fact that Trump is going to basically do judo here, which is to use the momentum of these people against them.
Well, I would say this: the fulfilling of the Word of God, and I believe that, I have also said this on your show numerous times, written about numerous times, that when I made the statement before God allows China and Russia to nuke the United States, he's going to reveal the sins of the leaders to the people, and the people sins before a holy God. Dave, I don't know, and please, there's more to come. I believe Pettygate is going to blow up. I believe when God rises to fight the cause of the helpless and to take the place of prosecuting attorney, he will do that so that all will see why his judgment, why and when it fell on the United States. What was the basis? To whom much is given, much is required. And even Obama, the only time I believe he told the truth was when he said America is no longer a Christian nation. We have paganism, we have neo-paganism, we've got every variation and form of evil, we've got every form now of demonic manifestation, i.e., I believe that cannibalism is one of the biggest deals, and we're in a position now where we really, really, really need to understand that our national minds will not be able to deal with it, our national emotions will not be able to handle it, our historic thoughts of what America was will not be helpful to try and put the current events into that. Because while we're talking the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and the founding fathers and the great men and the great men of God, and I'm not just talking about preachers. I'm talking about people that understood one word that's irrelevant now in this country. It's freedom. It's freedom. We are techno-serfs in an electronic prison, and instead of wearing bracelets and shackles, we're wearing the equivalent of brain tampering electronics, whether it's our iPads, iPhones, computers, telephones, anything, especially television. So again, we live in an electronic, if you will, I won't use the word matrix, but an electronic prison. And everything we think, do, and say is in the records they made today. It's everybody. Please, ladies and gentlemen, let me get the bottom line out. And I don't know how much longer we have, Dave, but the bottom line is this. It's not the issues, not just that I've been, basically messed with for 25 years, ever since I've been on talk radio. You've been messed with. Everybody who is telling alt media stuff is being messed with. They're being recorded. They're being placed into an algorithm. And I don't care what hyenas or jackals from hell say, you guys are just trying to scare us. You're just fear mongers and fear porn purveyors or whatever else they say, By the way, when I hear those two terms, I know poster children for shills. Both those terms, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, you've talked about this, Dave, written articles on it. When you hear the word fear porn and fear monger, those are two of the most descriptive terms that the shadow government used to not only discredit, but to allow communication between sleepers and non-sleepers, I'm talking agents, to know. It's kind of my way of telegraphing. It's kind of like the Illuminati's way in the intelligence world of giving high fives. So, here's the thing. Does God, when does God allow the first strike against the United States? When I made that statement, Dave, about before God destroys the United States, he's going to reveal the sins of the leaders to the people, and boy, that's underway. You're a part of that. Alt media is a part of that, and they hate that. And then the people sins before a holy God. come on, the people are there's nothing new under the sun. Solomon said that which has been, that which will be has already been. So, I mean, if they want to have a bacchanalian orgy at spring break, I got news for them. Caligula had them beat, okay? If they want to be perverse in all their rituals and rites and do what they do and the disgusting things it's even ashamed to speak about, I got news for them. They're not new in that. The old pagans and the old pagan priests and their old ways are back full time. Look at how the gangs in Mexico took over. There was a time they just shot each other. Now it's not enough to shoot each other. You've got to basically mutilate, maim, cannibalize, eat, and bury people alive. And that's just the sanitary version of it. So what's troubling to me, Dave, is that again, the Republicans, I'm talking now politicians, are leaving the narrative in the courts of the damned. The courts of the damned, in my opinion, are the mainstream media, the present judiciary, and the Democrats and Republicans who have been compromised and who are scared to death of the revelations of Pettagate.
I think you're right on the money. In fact, you said something a couple of minutes ago I want to go back to. You know that I wrote about the fact that I was interviewing Josh Coy, and we were comparing notes on the FEMA camp facility in Alaska that can allegedly hold 2 million people. And Josh was talking about the introduction of behavior modification coming from Project HARP. And since that time, first of all, that broadcast was tremendously interfered with. Heavy breathing, ladies talking, paging like you're in a bus depot, and then our interview got cut off. Josh and I were separated from all communication for 2 days, 2 entire days. I mean, we couldn't email each other without a bouncing. We couldn't call each other on the cell phone without an all circuits are busy signal. I mean, everything we tried to do. So we came back together, and we did a second interview, as you know, and we had the same kind of interferences again. And I think it ties into the behavior modification aspect using Project HARP. What do you think?
Well, here's the deal. And I know that's kind of a catch-all phrase and statement, but I know this, I can't believe the naivety, and I'll say this, I cannot believe the naivety in the alt media. Remember when Matt Drudge, and I'm not saying he's naive by any means, appeared on Alex Jones and told him that Alex said he had a meeting with the Supreme Court judge and justice, and that justice said the internet is coming to an end, okay? Well, I believe that we're going to see the literal fulfillment of that. Because, again, now, and you and I talked about this, I think, on one of your shows, the Department of Propaganda. Isn't it amazing that this whole statement concerning fake news came out after the Department of Propaganda got funded? I mean, people need to know that. There is a Department of Propaganda. So, tell a lie, tell a big enough lie, tell enough times, and pretty soon the people believe it. And one of the German high command guys, I want to say Goering, I could be off there, Luftwaffe head, but I think his statement is, thank God people can't think for themselves, or thank God people don't think. And that's true. It's the same thing that Orwell said. You don't have to worry until the people, and he was an insider, okay? George Orwell said, we, the elite, won't have to worry as long as the public stays unconscious. And, I came up with a term years ago when I started on talk radio. I think you'll understand the validity of this term. Narcosynthesis. What that means simply is a Hegelian dialectic, which is basically thesis, antithesis and synthesis. The thesis is you create a problem. The antithesis is you provide the solution. The synthesis is that out of the problem that you created the solution for, you bring about a whole change, a whole paradigm, or as Toppler calls, another turning, the fourth turning or whatever. The idea is simply this, that we are a bunch of bloody lab rats in a Skinner box being manipulated in the electromagnetic realm beyond just food and pleasure. beyond just shocking us for bad behavior and rewarding us for good behavior. Now the battlefield is the mind, and I'm going to add a statement to that, and the battlefield is a spine. And a spine, the thing is that until the men of God awaken, and I don't know if it's going to be, I don't know if for them to be awakened, if they're going to be shaken, and whatever has to go on, because there has to be a great big reality check based on a wake-up call, in my opinion. I don't believe we've got the wake-up call yet, but somebody said, well, how will you know when it is? I said, trust me, when you see it, you'll know it.
Yeah, we're all in agreement here. I mean, a lot of us in the independent media, Steve, are talking about there is a big event coming. We're just not seeing what it is yet.
Well, and I'm suggesting, too, that it's going to be off the charts. Let me share this. How dumb unto death, how devoid of reality can people be when they don't even hold the press accountable for Fukushima? Fukushima, the prognosis of the Pacific Ocean worsens daily. Now Balagsav, the volcano, is going off, and it's changing the pH of the water almost instantly. Well, Dave, there's a certain pH, meaning the level of acidity and alkalinity in a very narrow band where life lives. You go one way, it dies. You go the other way, it dies. In other words, too basic, it kills the fish. Too acidic, it kills the fish. The word I'm looking for is alkaline. And then you add in the chemtrails spraying incessantly off the coast, and I'm talking off the coast, the west coast, from Alaska down to probably Tierra del Fuego, the end of South America. Then we see people all over the world now beginning to panic where they never saw chemtrails. See, remember this, somebody else's problem is always their problem. People can be feigningly sympathetic or genuinely sympathetic, but until it happens to them, they will not rise to fight the cause of their friends, usually, until they're in the same boat as their friends. And in other words, when someone's miserable, nobody wants company with miserable, unless, of course, you're drunk, hanging out in a bar, and you're buying everybody booze, and they're more miserable than you are, But the point that I guess is really imperative to our talk tonight is that there's going to be a shakeup, and it's going to be necessary for the men of God and the people of God in this country in order for them to take up their rightful positions and stand against evil. I'm afraid before you can have a take-up, you're going to have a shake-up.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right, Steve. It's going to unfold, and I think it's going to unfold quickly. Are you subscribing to the notion that these events will be set off and will culminate in an American spring?
I don't think so. I think it's going to go longer than that, okay? And I don't think necessarily the spring is the thing. See, here's a long time ago, and I used to be frustrated, Dave, because I'd pray and pray and pray and believe that God would give me a warning so I could warn the people, and I was really into, and people who listened to me 25 years ago know, I wanted that. I wanted that for God's people's sake. And then finally the Lord talked to me, and he said, you know why I won't tell you that, Steve? And I said, no, I really want to know, okay? And I wasn't arrogant or anything, but I really wanted to know. He said, because I have given mankind freedom to exercise their free will, either for me or against me. And he said, what I'm allowing through this period is people who will accept my grace to come under not only the grace I offer, but the saving, the salvation through Jesus, but also those who are going to be tares to grow up for the harvest of the tares. Now, that made sense to me, okay? In essence, God was saying, because of free will, you won't know. And because I honor free will, I let the events happen. So I used to say the time will determine the events. No longer. Now it's the events determine the time. It gives you a whole different perspective. Instead of watching the timer, whether it's the Atomic Scientist Bulletin of whatever minutes to midnight, you're watching the events. Same thing with David Rockefeller's death, okay? You're watching for the phraseology. You're watching for he who takes, if you will, the mantle and starts to speak, act, and talk like him.
I think you're absolutely right. I got one final question for you, Steve, and it's something that really comes from my wife. I'm going to paraphrase what she said to me earlier, that there's a total lack of coverage of David Rockefeller's death in the mainstream media. How do you account for that?
Well, cover up and cover over, okay? Again, the passing of David Rockefeller is, again, they want to keep the cloak on it, okay? Because they don't want, us talking about what we're talking about, because people think, oh, it's just one of the rich billionaires. Maybe they'll even acknowledge he's an Illuminati, but he's dead now, so everything's better. That's the thing I'm telling you is not the case. He's dead now, so everything's worse. When I say everything's worse, I don't mean that it directly relates to his death, but the timing signal, and I gave you Swinton's quote and Rockefeller's quote, they're two, how do I say this? They're a parallel thought process carrying out. Swinton's talking about the New York Times being a bunch of bloody liars, and by the way, he was the lead editor of it for a while. And then he's saying that the press is whores, and there's no way you're going to get the truth. So let me ask you this, and because we're coming to the end of this, Dave, how can people even believe that the mainstream, that if they heard that quote that I just quoted Rockefeller, we'd like to thank him for keeping our plan secret so we could screw the American people, pull the wool over their eyes, and ultimately destroy them. That's the bottom line. How can the mainstream press even dare to cover him? Because then they have to talk about, well, who was he? What was he? They don't even want to talk about all the numerous heart transplants he's got. But you see, here's the thing. Evil will stay submerged as long as it benefits them. And God is saying, your evil days, and I believe he's speaking to the followers of the evil one, your evil days are about to be exposed. Now here comes the tricky part. Given the choice between good and evil, the majority of people will accept evil. Remember I said this on your show years ago, the formula that I was given, IVND, identify, vilify, nullify, destroy. Have we not in alt news been identified and vilified?
Yes.
Have we not now been faced with someone's going to pull a switch on us? And when that day comes, ladies and gentlemen, you better bloody well believe, or you better have prayed up all to the point that you know what this stuff means. Because, Dave, they won't have you to send an email to. They won't have me to send an email to. They will probably, even if they knew how to send Morse code, it'd be tough to find smoke signals, because then the drones would zoom in on them. So there's no place to run. There's no place to hide except the 91st Psalm. And that's, the secret place of the Most High God. It literally means you're covered under the umbrella. You're under the wings of God. And he defends his own. And this is the thing. God asks his people to do the possible, but then he asks his people to pray and intercede and believe for the impossible. There's no statement, there's no battle, there's no confrontation in the old or new where men, apart from God, were ever given the victory. And the same statements that Goliath uttered out of his mouth at David is the same challenge to us today. The giants are here. When I'm talking about, the very evil persona of the giants, very soon to see the physical giants. People say, what does that have to do with Christianity? Everything. Jesus said men's hearts failing them for fear of looking after those things coming up, on the earth. And so we're in I would say this, we're in a dangerous time. For those people listening to this broadcast, if you suffered from reality avoidance disorder, RAD, if you've suffered from being a DUD, a dud, dumb unto death, or denying unto destruction, you need to really pray. Because look, I have a friend that forgive me, I may have told the story. Bottom line, all the years of being my friend, and he worked for me, and I fed him for probably off and on 7-8 years, and gave him meaning. Probably one of the guys that had the worst self-image. And then, his true colors were shown. And the true colors came out to be Nothing in alt media. By the way, you know somebody's wrong when they listen to NPR all the time, National Public Radio. But he wouldn't even consider any evidence to the contrary to his position. You cannot maintain that posture when you're sitting in your, I'll just say this, denying behind mode, where you're sitting on a chair waiting for Jesus to come. And I'm not mocking the Lord in this statement, but literally I've had people say, you go out and fret. I'm just sitting here. I'm watching. I'm being blessed, brother. And I'm just sitting here. And when I go, I don't even think I'll have to get up. Jesus is going to move me. I said, well, you better pray that somebody else doesn't kick your butt out of that chair before Jesus comes. And again, there's no disrespect to the Lord, only to the people that absolutely have no clue of the demands of a living God upon his children who have been saved by his son's wonderful gift of salvation to us all. And look, I'm not apologizing for Jesus. The Satanists hate Jesus. The Democrats hate Jesus. The Marxists hate Jesus. The Muslims hate Jesus. Everybody hates Jesus. The NFL hates Jesus, and they do. Jesus said simple, if you're not for me, you're against me, And the bottom line is, everybody, don't speak that name. Yet you can praise, the false prophets all the day long. You can basically hail Buddha. You can basically listen to the nightmarish Hollywood beliefs until your head's ready to explode. And you can only take so many of those guys. But at the end of the day, Dave, people have got to understand everything they've known and everything they assume still exists. It's gone. It's gone. You may have a reflection. You may have a quantum, if you will, reflection of reality. But unless the foundations are built up, King Solomon, wisest guy in the world, said, if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do?
Absolutely. Steve, you've said it all.
And that was in Proverbs. If the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? All we've been able to do, I believe God's answered the prayers and intercession of his people. Those who have repented, he's drawn closer to him. But at the end of the day, until the foundations are built up, as in Nehemiah's day, and I would say this to people, don't go on the internet and blab to your, quote, chat group. If God puts something in your heart, pray about it. And then ask God to bring like-minded people across your path. Faces of Death book is not the best place to go, Twitter. Oh, man, I could tell you what I think that stands for, but I won't, because then I'd have to probably apologize. It's not to the people that are on it, but it would be the acronym I came up for one time. So the idea is simply this, is that people would rather go to fallen humans for advice than seeking the living God. And the angels that, when the women came to the empty tomb of Jesus, I love what the angel said. I wanted to shake that guy's hand and say, when he said, why seek ye the living amongst the dead? Go tell his disciples that Jesus has risen. So, Dave, I will not apologize for, the name of Jesus. I will not apologize for Christian Witness. I got to tell you a funny story. I won't tell you who, but our film company got a phone call today, and Tim took it, and I got to be really careful here. And the deal is they wanted to know if, we would help them in a specific endeavor for a pretty powerful revelation. And then they hemmed and hawed, and they, basically they beat around the bush, and Tim picked it up immediately. And he said, oh, you're worried about our Christian Witness, aren't you? Well, do you think you could do this in a more secular way? You see, here's the thing. They have an agenda. All of these people have an agenda, and it does not include Jesus. And I would say this, Jesus said simply, without me you can do nothing. So, Dave, you never apologize, I never apologize, but the neat thing is we don't have to apologize. And Jesus said, if we won't confess him before men, he won't confess us before his Father in heaven. And I get what, I can't use the correct term that I want to use, but I get, how do I say this carefully? I get very cowardly individuals that have slang names for them who post anonymous things wanting me to do this or do that. I'm sure you get them too. yet they've never done anything. They've never done anything to help anybody. But you need to do this. If you were really a Christian, you do this. Blah, blah, blah. Well, I got news for you. Those are the tares talking. Talking tares produce so many snares, you know. But wheat is that which nourishes. Almost sounds like a new haiku or something. But anyway, thanks for letting me give an update, and I hope I've been clear. David Rockefeller's death accelerates everything. It does not slow it down. The evil spirits that were in him will find a new habitation. Watch for phraseology that Rockefeller's speeches or what he's on record as saying. You can go on an internet search and then watch who mimics it and watch who avoids it at all costs, because they don't want to touch this thing and turn over another hornet's nest. But remember, it's what it is. I think somebody's trying to call in, Dave. I apologize.
That's fine, Steve. And Steve, we're out of time anyway. We're right up against it.
Okay.
Thanks so much for joining us, my friend. Look forward to talking to you again. And thanks for the update on David Rockefeller and your reaction to his death.